Good morning, everyone, and welcome to season 10. Season 10 of Gather for Her. I am amazed. I'm thrilled. I'm excited to be here with all of you watching and the circle that is us here at Powerhouse. If this is your first time jumping into Gather for Her, Gather for Her is a Powerhouse Masterclass series exploring what it means to be a relational leader in these unprecedented times of global change. These conversations are offered to illuminate hope, to encourage possibility, and to challenge you to make the shift from an individuated, top down leadership model to heart centered and relational. I'm Tina O, and I'm your moderator. I'm an ally. I'm of settler heritage. I'm currently living as an uninvited guest on the traditional, unceded, and ancestral territories of the Skohomish people. I'm grateful to play, to create, and do my best to steward the land where I rest my head here in Nikwalakwam, also known as Bowen Island. And I'm very grateful to be in circle this morning with my co-conversationalists, Christina Benti, Charlene Senjenko, Janet Mohapi Banks, and Sharon Marshall, who's not with us this morning, and our special guest, Hillary Samson. But before we jump into that, if you're new to us, I just want to introduce you to a few things about us. Powerhouse champions relational changemakers and their organizations. We offer hands at your back support as you accelerate the social impact that you're here to make. And our impact media producer today of Gather for Her is Regen Media, who invites us to take the power of media into our own hands by supporting stories that heal, regenerate, uplift, and transform. Every 2 weeks, we're here live on LinkedIn, followed by an hour-long wisdom circle where we unpack with you the concepts that are opened up here. These circles are held on our community of practice, which is called the Leader Path, which is available to you for $25 a month, but I'll tell you more about that later. This is a live conversation, and so we would love it if you would introduce yourself to us as a listener, a viewer, new to us, over in the chat here on LinkedIn. Say hello, let us know where you're connecting in from with an acknowledgement of gratitude for the lands in which you rest, play, and grow. Relational leadership, as we invite you into this conversation, we want you to remember that it's a practice. It might be awkward at first, so come as you are here. Ask your questions, be awkward, and let's roll. And before we just jump in, I want to welcome, because you're seeing a new face here with us in season 10, I want to welcome Janet Mohapi Banks, new to our Gather for Her host circle. Janet's an executive coach, a conscious leadership trainer, and a facilitator, and she brings her wisdom to our Amplify Leadership program. And I'm going to let Janet self-introduce herself in just a sec. I'm just going to pass over to you, Christina, to just start us off today, and then we'll close on Shar to introduce Hillary. Over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tina. Wow, season 10. It's so interesting because I was thinking about how season 1 started accidentally and quickly moved into intentional. And so here we are at it intentionally at season 10. So I'm super excited. So I am joining you today from a very different time zone and a very different weather pattern. As you can see, if you happen to be watching, you can see my shoulders. But I'm absolutely thrilled to be here and looking forward to this conversation. And I am so excited to be in circle with these amazing, intelligent, heartfelt, wise, and grounded leaders. So I'm very, very honored to be here, and excited to pass it over to Janet. Yeah, who's joining us as a co-host. So welcome, Janet.
Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be here and absolutely honored to be invited to be a co-host this season. I'm blown away by it. I am coming to you from the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish people, and I cannot tell you how grateful I am to be here. As you can tell from my accent, I'm originally from the UK, but absolutely adoring every second I spend in Canada here, Turtle Island. As Tina said, I am an executive coach, a leadership development specialist, and I love nothing more than to help leaders lead from their souls, lead from their hearts, and really just raise everybody else around them up. And I think that's what relational leadership is all about. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm going to pass you on to Charlene.
Thanks, Janet, and welcome as a co-host. It's pretty exciting. Before I introduce our very special guest and a very special friend, I want to touch back on the intentionality of Gather for Her. We very much decided as a braid to explore what it might look like to intentionally track conversations with change makers and leaders over a pathway of 9 years leading up to 2030. And what might that look and feel like if we just started to live and lead more intentionally into that space? And media has actually allowed us to not only witness the story unfolding, but actually hopefully to be able to go back and record the story unfolding, because I very much think that there's a documentary in here amongst all of this. So in season 10, I'm thrilled to kick it off as the founder of Powerhouse and now leading Regen Media. Just welcoming you from my home on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Squamish people here on the Sunshine Coast. And what is in my heart this morning is an openness of leading in a new way. I will read Hillary Samson's bio, and I'll finish with just a couple of personal thoughts before we kick off our conversation. So excuse me as I read, but I'd like to get it right. So after 20 years as a conventional operations and business planning professional for social ventures, mainly women-led and or Indigenous-led organizations, Hillary has now expanded her work through transforming ventures to focus on operationalizing businesses so that they are in greater alignment with their soul and the sacred purpose of the organization or business. So that means that Hillary works with clients to ensure that the values of the business, like kindness, courage, equity, and sovereignty, are showing up in all of the processes, procedures, and systems throughout their work and their workplace. Through this work, as well as with continuing studies, Hillary is adding her voice to the conversation of reimagining capitalism to help create organizations that are regenerative, equitable, and are in right relationship with profit and sustainability. This is going to be such a good conversation. So what I'd love to add to that is I am one of those organizations that has had the pleasure of working with Hillary Samson through Powerhouse and Regen for the past few years. And I can absolutely tell you there is no more important work than this work at this time in history. And Hillary, I think what I'm most excited about to welcome you is just someone that notices you're stretching into your next level of greatness. And we're catching you in that stretch, like in that next. And so that's just where I'd love to open the conversation, but so grateful to have you here and welcome.
Wow. Thank you so much, Charlene. And so lovely to be here, Christina and Janet and Tina. Wow. My heart is full. I'm very excited. I will take a moment to acknowledge that I am on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. And I very much am continuing to understand what it means to be an uninvited guest on these lands. It's for sure a process. And I am just so grateful to be here. Thank you so much. Yeah, welcome, Hillary. I love, I just love that capitalism was just dropped into the space, the reimagining capitalism. Like, oh, I'm just going to drop reimagining capitalism and carry on. I love
capitalism, as I like to say.
Oh my gosh. That is wonderful. Why don't we start there? Because our first question for you, and this really does come back from another person in the house, Gail Stepanek-Kaber, who does purpose work, and so we've been digging in a bit more into this purpose conversation, and so I wonder if you might share with us, what is the purpose of your work, or why does Transforming Ventures exist?
Yeah, it's the most important question, right? So I have just this fabulous background of corporate work. Like, I'm very grateful for this rich background of consulting and corporate work, and I've worked with nonprofits and corporations and the whole thing. And through a couple of incidents in my life, I just really leaned into how important the sacred teachings are, the ancient wisdom that we know, and just really these immutable truths of nature that we know to be true. And what I not just observed, but felt was that our businesses, the very architecture of how we run our businesses, was out of alignment with that. And I think it's this out of alignmentness that is causing so many problems with us personally, with our relationship with the environment. It shows up with disengagement. It shows up with stress. It shows up with the ever-increasing inequity between the haves and the have-nots, and on and on and on. And just my work in the world, I think we need all the voices in the conversation, but my work in the world is truly at that fundamental level. Like, what are the principles that we need to shift in our businesses, in our work, and in what we call capitalism, the very underpinnings of how this world works. And I believe that is because what I believe is that our businesses actually are really good. They exist outside of ourselves, even if we're a solopreneur. And they have their own soul entity, soul resonance. They have their own purpose, and they want to contribute to the highest good of everyone and everything. And that's there for us as the stewards of this business. We can access that. And we're not in many situations. Even when there's the best intentions, right? Like, I've worked with some incredible nonprofits. And I've worked with some nonprofits that have this, beautiful purpose, and they want so badly to do good in the world. And then they treat their staff terribly. Like, there's just this dissonance, and they don't have the tools or the language or really that kind of, like I talk about, the fundamental architecture to know how to make sure their purpose is everywhere. Because if it's not everywhere in how you live your life and how you run your business and how you treat your customers and your staff, if it's not what I talk about, like the process of answering the phone, if all of your values aren't in those systems, your impact on, what you want to get done in the world, your impact is greatly reduced. So that was a bit of a mouthful, but that's why I exist in the world. That's why Transforming Ventures exists in the world.
Wow, I really heard impact in that. Yeah, I see your mic's off, Christina and Shar. Ooh!
So Hillary, I imagine that folks that come to work with you, that there's different entry points. Can you maybe share some of what are the entry points? Like, what would draw somebody in? What is that? What's that entry point where it's like, oh my gosh, I have to work with Hillary. Like, and I have to, I see something needs to change.
That's kind of the entry point. You're somebody who knows that something is off and you want to do better. You want your business to do better. You want other businesses to do better. And you believe that that's possible, that there is, another way. And I do have this very conventional background. So I try to bring it all in, and I do believe in incremental change. Some people are burn it all down and build it back up, but that's not me. And that's not my work in the world. So I often work with companies when they're growing. And when you go through kind of a growth phase of your businesses, or a change, or you're adding a new product or service, you notice the kind of crunchiness that's happening. And you can approach it in the same way you've always approached it before, and just, like, try to wrench it all together and look at profit only and increasing shareholder value. And yet something in you is telling you there's a different way. There's a different way of making this work and this business grow. And that's where I can come in.
So you just got a follow-up question on that. It is part of the work, like, just kind of exploring what are the blind spots?
So it can be, yeah. And, I use conventional language, like I do systems audits. And so they typically reveal where the challenges are. I often start with, as Charlene knows, projections, because I believe that language speaks through your numbers. And then we can see, where is this doesn't make sense, and where do you want to grow, and where does this want to go? And then once we've identified some areas that need or want or are asking to be improved, with my new work in the world, or I guess a better way of putting it is my expanded work in the world, instead of just, I used to operationalize systems for efficiency and profit. And now what I do is we work together with what your values are, and we're optimizing for efficiency and profit, because those are not bad things, and also how you want your values to show up. So is there kindness in your project management system? Is there equity in how you deal with all your human resources issues? Where are your values showing up and not showing up? And let's make some improvements there. Does that answer your question a little bit better, Christina?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. I've got another follow-up question, but I'll toss it over to.
I think systems thinker over there, Christina. She's like digging around in systems. That's why. I want to pass actually to you, Janet, if that's all right. Just because I know your work is very soul based as well, and I imagine there's a great conversation to be had between you and Hillary.
There's definitely a huge synergy between Hillary's work and the work that I do in the world. What struck me about when Hillary was speaking was when she said values need to be everywhere. And that is like fundamentally true. And I think that is where a lot of companies are missing the mark there, or their value system is really heavily placed in one direction, missing all of the rest. So my question to Hillary would be, how do you help companies to level out their values so it really does touch every single department in the company?
Well, I think it's first making sure, and this is why Powerhouse and Regen are so exciting to work with, is first making sure that there is the actual desire to make the change, because that has to exist throughout the company too. And I work with people who actually are willing to make the change, because it can be tricky, and it can mean there needs to be some harder truths told. And it can mean, getting back to the whole concept of capitalism. Our businesses need to be profitable, or they're not businesses. But in terms of like shareholder value, what are we willing to rebalance? So it's a big decision. You know, you have to want it, and you have to know that this is going to be worth it. I'm reading just started a book by Rebecca Henderson. She's a professor at Harvard, and it's called Reimagining Capitalism for a World on Fire. And she says one of the things that struck me right at the beginning was I've been through change, and I've seen what's on the other side. So if you're just fearful, then it's not gonna, you're just gonna keep sticky noting things or putting it just at the surface, right? You have to be like, no, these things are true. This is what I want. So that's a big answer to the first thing that we need to make sure. And then really it is getting the person I'm working with to tap into like what is the thing that they know is holding them back, because they know, right? You don't need a consultant to come in and say, you should be doing this and you should be doing that. The first thing is to like listen and get them to trust that they are the stewards of the soul of this business, and they know where the challenges are. And then it can be quite tactical, right? Then we look at the processes and the systems, and we improve them, and everything does not have to change at once. It's okay to just do better each day. That's a good thing. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Sharon. Before we move on to the next question, I just want to give you an opportunity. If there's something on this piece around purpose work that's alive for you?
Well, I think just listening to the conversation so far, and this is where I wanted to, I knew Christina would get a giggle, but when I think about Hillary's work in alignment, I actually think about going to a chiropractor. And if you think about your values as your spine, so many businesses try to fix, their fingers or their foot or their knee, but really it has to come from realigning at the spine level. But what I think is so exciting about Hillary's work, as someone who's experienced it, is that it doesn't have to be an either or. It's okay to have purpose, values, and efficiency and profit in the same sentence. And yeah, as someone that's worked in the social impact space for 20 years, that has been a conversation that's been a bit clunky. You've been either put into the do good camp as a nonprofit, or the scalability and profitability at all cost camp. And now in reimagining capitalism, it is how might we live and breathe our values through our business with congruency and alignment that takes the best care of us all. That's what comes through for me. So way to be a chiropractor.
I love that so much, Charlene. That's so great. And the concept I try to bring in around that, around holding, and of course I've experienced the same thing as you, right? Like people who just keep like hitting up against this flow of revenue, which is the flow of energy, right? So that they can do more of their work in the world. And it's like, who do you want to have the money and power in our society? Like, I look at there's all these like shows coming out, like We Crashed, and we've given all this accolades and power, and given all our like hard cash to these people who aren't necessarily great human beings. Like, don't we want all of our profit and money to go to people that will hold that in the best way for all of us? As I say that, I realize this is idealistic thinking, and that's what I want. That's what I want. I want the best people in the world to be the stewards of that energy system we call money and wealth and capital.
I just want to pull through some really specific languaging pieces of course, the five of us are all in on this conversation. So we're already like, we're in the house, we're making the coffee. We're like, we've already reorganized our house to be around all these reimaginings, but there might be new people. that are listening here. And there's two things that you said. They're like, oh, that equals that. And what you said was that numbers are the language of business. So like that alone is a takeaway for us, for people listening. Like you might look at that, like what is your business saying? What's it speaking? What's its speech? And then you said the flow of energy as the flow of revenue. So that as well is really simple. It's like, how is your revenue flowing? What is that saying about the energy of your business? Would I be getting that right, Hillary?
Absolutely. Yes. That's, I think that's fundamentally what I believe is everything's one thing. Like there's not other things. There's just one thing. And if it's true one place, it's true every place, right? And the chiropractor is the perfect example, right? Because that's actually what they're doing is they're allowing the electrical energetic charges that go properly and smoothly through your body. And that's true with money as the system too, and the revenue and profitability so that you can do more of your work and your business can be sustained over time. It's just another expression of flow of energy, and it gets, blocked off and it sometimes needs some adjustment to allow that flow to come through again. So that's perfect.
Thank you. There might be
the numbers are, that they're just a great little practical way of showing how that revenue is flowing. Oh my goodness, all of a sudden my expenses compared to my revenue have gone up. What's going on? And is that a choice or is that just happening to me? And how do I balance that so it supports the business?
And I think it's interesting too that we, as someone who's kind of committed to letting the world know that the hero's journey isn't the only story journey out there, is that even the way we're speaking about it, at least the way I'm thinking about it, is that we're still looking at the flow of money, like making more. And that's great. We want to make more for sure. But if we're also looking at the language of our revenue or the flow of our revenue in businesses that might be making astronomical profits, would we also be looking at how is that in relationship to the world? Like Hero's Journey would say transformation, hit the finish line, woo, success. But in a circular journey, it's not necessarily about just astronomical revenue. I'm curious where you take us with that.
Well, I think what comes to mind with that conversation is extraction. So where is that revenue, or more importantly for people who, steward the profit, where is that coming from? And typically our businesses and our capitalistic systems have been incredibly extractive. We know that businesses have extracted the value of a worker's more over time. So for every hour that a worker works, the shareholders keep a higher percentage of that. Like extreme examples, like, McDonald's, where you have in the United States, where you have a very, very small number of people becoming extremely wealthy on the backs of people who are making minimum wage and have no health care and can't afford to pay their bills or feed their children. That's not right profit. That is not okay. And we need to find a language to say, it's not okay to revere these people for doing that. And we're still in that cycle of this hero entrepreneurship and unicorns. And I have this thing that I think to be true is humans are really bad at acting their own best interests over time. We're good, like kind of short term, or we're pretty good midterm, but we're really bad about acting in our own best interest in the long term. This is why we really need to start leaning into, indigenous 7-generational wisdom. Like that's the answer to that, right? And it just, if your whole wealth is come from extracting it, and it's like I say it, like it's a violence, right? I promise you, there is no peace or joy or love or happiness in the end game. There might be a lot of fun. There might be a lot of like great trips, but there's no peace and joy in that. So unless this revenue, unless this profit flows, it's going to get you in the end. I promise.
I love that. There might be new people joining us. I just want to welcome anyone who's new to this conversation. Thank you for being here. Please introduce yourself over in the chat. And if you're just finding us here on LinkedIn, this is Gather for Her, a powerhouse masterclass series unpacking what it means to be a relational leader in these unprecedented times of global change, brought to you by Powerhouse and produced by Regen Media. Every 2 weeks, we're here live on LinkedIn, followed by an hour-long wisdom circle that's held in our community of practice, which is called the Leader Path, which is our relational leadership gym, where all these kinds of conversations happen, and we get to bridge Western leadership practices with relational ways of leading guided by Indigenous wisdom. You can find out more about that at powerhouse.com. And again, as a live conversation, introduce yourself and to each other in the chat and let us know where you're connecting from. Let's go back to you, Hillary. And we have a second question, which I feel like we kind of just did in a more roundabout way. But the question is, can you share with us one of your top relational leadership tips? And if you have a story to share, great. I don't know, but what can you offer us here?
So when I think of relational leadership, I go back to, sacred principles and wisdom. So whether you're talking about, non-dualistic spirituality, or whether you're looking at nature, the forest floor, or quantum physics, the truth is we're all completely interconnected. And I actually believe we're all one. We're all just one, and that any harm I extend to you, I'm extending to myself. Any love I extend to you, I'm extending to myself. And so relational leadership is acknowledging that. The story that comes to mind is actually I kind of loved this situation because it does point to the kind of incrementalness that can be revealed here. So I was working with a very conventional business in the gas industry, very, very conventional business. And we were chatting, and he was telling me about his challenges, and I just said to him, I can really tell you love your customers. Like, he was telling me stories of his customers. I'm like, I can really tell you love your customers. I want to work with you so that you can love your staff, because he was having a ton of issues with his staff and all these challenges and I'm like, we can, that can be there. And he was a lovely human being. He made lots of money and did good things with his money, and that was holding him back, is remembering that these frontline staff who might come and go, right? Like, they might only be with him for a little while, as we know so often happens in those kind of service industries. Every single one is someone that you can have a sacred relationship. I study a course called The Text in Miracles. I'm sorry, I study a text called A Course in Miracles, which many of you might know. And every relationship, every moment can be a sacred moment if you so choose. Saying hello to the bank teller, or just acknowledging your staff person, or asking if what's going on, if they're struggling at work. These are sacred moments if you so choose. And it can be at any time with anyone. And to me, that's relational leadership, is the sacredness. That's one of my pillars of Transforming Ventures, is work is sacred. It is where we can see, and learn who we are and where we need to grow, and through the world that's, being revealed in front of us, it's like, where is my best work in the world? Where can I bring joy to someone else through this work to bring joy to myself? And this is not every minute. Like, there's lots of crazy because, we're human. We're fully human. And there's a teacher that she has a word called anthropos, and it means to be fully human and fully divine. And that's the relationship, how she described it was, when we're in our anger or our jealousy or our crazy or disengagement or whatever, where can I show love and mercy? Where can there be a moment of mercy in that? And that's the relation part of relational leadership. And it doesn't have to be from the top to, like, it can be, we have these hierarchical structures. It can be between anyone at any time. And as a leader, fostering that and allowing for that and encouraging that is maybe the best thing you can do.
I'd love to ask, because you mentioned hierarchical structures there. Do you believe that that oneness, that, I am that kind of teaching can exist in a hierarchical structure, or do the structures need to be flatter for this relational leadership to truly be embodied into the company?
That's a great question, and something I'm investigating, as I'm going back to school in January to do my doctorate of business administration. I'm very, very excited. But here's how. So I'm looking forward to looking more into that. But here's what I believe to be true right now: is that hierarchy is just a tool. It's a really great efficiency tool. And when you don't have hierarchy, it can take a long time to make a decision, right? But what the problem is that people are using that tool to assign value to the human beings depending on where they are in the hierarchy. The example I always use is, it's like a hammer. You can use a hammer to knock in a nail, or you can use a hammer to kill somebody. It's not the hammer's fault. And yes, exactly. A tool is not a power structure. Exactly. Yeah. And I've seen flat organizations. Oh, first of all, there's all kinds of challenges with that. Like, who gets to define that this organization is non-hierarchical? And although it's a mess. Anyway, and I've seen organizations that get nothing done, all those things that can happen. So I would be very excited if a new structure revealed itself that was both efficient and more acknowledging of our oneness. I don't know what that is right now, but we will keep that as a curiosity and a fascination. So I'm not throwing out the hierarchy yet. I'm just trying to encourage and teach people that means nothing about the value of the human beings in their position on that hierarchy.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Hillary, for that. What I hear you saying when you're talking about, particularly about the hammer, it's actually storytelling, right? It's, how do we tell the story? What's the narrative? So what's the narrative around the numbers? What's the narrative around the organizational chart? What's the narrative around purpose? It's what's the stories and the meaning that we make within our organization. So I'm curious as to what you see the role of narrative shifting, and what the leverage points are for shifting an organization's narrative to do the work that you're talking about.
What comes to mind is that the narrative is created by everybody who is involved in that organization, including the customers and the suppliers and the staff and the leader. And of course, having a strong vision and a purpose, and the leader holds what's some call the source idea, and that lives in them, and they're stewards of that source idea, and it's a very important job, right? So it's not that I don't believe that you should go through all your strategy and defining your own leadership style, all those good things. But it's the acknowledgement that everyone who touches that organization is creating that story. And I remember I read a definition of culture as work culture is the stories that the people are telling at the lunch table or, around the water cooler. That's your culture, is how they're speaking of you. But it's more than that, just speaking of you, because that's disconnected. It's pulling everybody in to create the story together. It's recognizing that interconnectedness of us all to co-create what is here. If I can take a small tangent, I was doing some research, writing a proposal to be accepted to school. And the question I looked into was how interconnectedness in businesses, what kind of business models and governance models like co-ops or, shares of companies, that kind of thing, could support increased interconnectedness in the company, which could then support more sustainable, healthier companies. And I'm just touching briefly on this research, but what it already showed was that before you can have true interconnectedness, you have to have sovereignty. So it's paradoxical, right? Which that always, if it's paradoxical, I'm like, oh, I'm on the right path. Because if every person in that organization recognizes their power and their brilliance, even for like 5% more of the time, and then from that place of their, highest self and highest good, then you connect with the next person in the organization who's also operating from that higher self, from that state of sovereignty and power and responsibility. That's powerful. And when I say sovereignty, I do always like to acknowledge that the thing that systemic discrimination does is block our ability to access our sovereignty. So I'm speaking as a person of privilege who has relatively easy access to their sovereignty, and I feel it like moments a day or moments a week, right? So when you have that kind of systemic discrimination, it can be really difficult. So, and that's but that is what even research is showing, and plus it feels right? Like once, we can feel that in our bodies when we are in our higher self, and then we're connecting with people at that level. That's power in our businesses. Like that's rocket fuel.
Wow. I just want to name the systemic discrimination piece that you mentioned as a obstacle, roadblock to personal sovereignty. And just want to name that in the system. And of course, in the work that we're talking about, a relational leadership, my hope is that by working relationally, or even just thinking in a circle way, that more gateways will be open for that. So thank you for naming that. Thank you for naming that. As a bridge organization of Indigenous and non-Indigenous, I often feel like on a monthly basis of my blind spots, the blind spots that of course we don't know are blind spots until we get hit by them. And that's one of them, the systemic discrimination, not as a box checking awareness I see, but rather the lived experience of systemic discrimination and that as a roadblock to sovereignty. So just want to thank you for illuminating that. We're moving into our last sort of round, and we want to move into resilience next, because of course, as a change maker, Hillary, again, we're a circle. We get you. We love you. We're like, that's why you're here. We're on the same conversation. But I know that you're out in the world as a change maker dealing with, oh my gosh, you don't get it. Now what? well, I got the contract. I didn't get the contract because people are ready for it. People are not ready for it. Should I even be doing this? Oh my gosh, this is hard. All the things that come with being a change maker. And
Are you in my head, Tina?
well, you know what I've discovered about change makers? We're kind of all in the same head, right? It's like same monologue, right?
We're all one.
Yeah. And I wonder if you might share with us a resilience tip for you as a change maker, because I know people are listening, that like people who tune in together for her are here because they want to be part of that change, and they want hands at their back. So what do you got? What can you share?
Yeah, this is such a great question, because I was born into the world super unresilient. When I was a kid, you could take me out with a look, like for days. Like you could knock me down with a feather. Like, and I particularly notice it because my daughter's got a ton of bounce. Like she feels things and then she's like totally fine. I'm like, you are a miracle. So I think a lot about resiliency as I've, now I'm in my 50s and working through it. And 100% the biggest change for me is acknowledging and listening to my divine inner guidance. 100%. And it has been a practice. So I started with, what should I have for dinner? Or even before that, like I'm going for a walk. I'm at a crossroads of a walk. Which way should I go? Completely risk-free, right? Like there's no consequences to this. And you just practice it. And then you learn the yeses and nos, which are in your body. They're not in your mind. And then, wow, now you have this incredible power of a yes and a no, right? And so it just allows you to access this higher power, to not be alone, to know that, hands at your back, as you always say, right? Like that is the hands at your back, is this inner guidance. And that just made all the difference in the world to me, in terms of not just being so in my head about decisions or when to do things. It can even be like, I even can get in my head around my perfectionism. So I sometimes don't, or sometimes procrastinate because of my perfectionism. I don't want to finish it in case it's, not perfect. And so I'll wake up in the morning and go like, I'm writing that section of the report today. Please help me. I pray all the time, like constantly. Please help me write that section of the report today by the end of the day. And it's the weirdest, almost creepy thing. Like all of a sudden I'll just be like opening up the computer and writing, it'll just flow out of me and then I'm done. It's crazy and powerful. And I just know I'm not alone, like I'm co-creating this. And then once I was able to really believe in that power and that guidance, then you can bring in what I truly think is the most powerful thing in our work and workplaces and our lives, which is surrender. So when you really don't know what to do, like this is impossible. I don't know what to do. I can't think my way out of this. I surrender, like, over to you. Sometimes a bit chippy about it. You want me to do this thing? Over to you, because I don't know how to do this. And luckily the universe is, kind and takes my chippiness. And it'll just unfold. Like it's beautiful and it's crazy. And if we could access this power, like I say, even 5% more in our businesses, and have that faith and have that knowledge and truth of how the world actually works, then the good that we're trying to do in the world, it's really, really on fire.
Wow. Thank you, Hillary. We're moving into our last circle. And so I'm going to invite us all to, actually, first I'm going to take all of us, listeners, all of us, just take a moment to breathe, Just allow in what wants to settle in, knowing that it doesn't all have to stay right now. What you need to be nourished by will be received by you. Thank you. One of my dearest friends, Nicole Natras, whom you all know, always looks at me and goes, 7 seconds, Overbury, 7 seconds. I'm like, 7 seconds? She's like, every time you finish something, give yourself 7 seconds of integration. So that breath was a little bit for that. Let's do our wrap-up circle with what we're leaving with today. And we can take a bit more time. I want to give us time to say what we need to say. So it's not a quick one. Give yourself what you need to say to close. And what are you leaving with today? And who wants to go first? Shar? Yeah? Did I see a finger? Yeah.
I'll jump in quick. Kind of integrates many of the pieces that I've experienced with Hillary, but also hopefully in a kind of a practical, like take home kind of way. As a founder, I think every company is founded by someone, right? That is really the seat of the soul. That's really where it comes from. And when Hillary said that source idea, I think that as founders, whether you're brand new or you're no longer, running your business, like you were the founder of a business. And so I think that the source idea is something that is like when Hillary was talking about that, the light came about for me in that. And I know in the work of Powerhouse, one of the things that we do is actually to write, to give voice to a founder's story. Now, obviously that story refines and expands, but to give voice to that source of light. And then from there, that light starts to get brighter as people understand that source. So for me personally, it was the braid. And then it was the fire dancers. And then it's folks that start to integrate with Gather in the fire circles. But I think that, just from a practical point of view, understand your founder's story if you're a founder, or ask about the founder's story if you're not, because that's the source of the whole thing in the, at the first place, right? And that really is the underbelly of communications and branding. It really is it. So if you want a practical takeaway, that's what it is for me today.
Awesome. For me, oh, sorry, Christina, I just saw your. For me, it's the my biggest takeaway is the fact that you need to be like a whole company needs to be comprised of sovereign individuals that shine in their own right, in order for everybody else to be able to slot in like Tetris. Yeah, like I always use this. Everything needs to fall like Tetris. Everybody can slot together like a jigsaw puzzle. And when everybody is their unique jigsaw puzzle piece without having to shave bits off, then that's when the whole vision can really come into view. And the other piece that obviously I absolutely adore is the intuition piece, the trusting the flow. The analogy that I often use is that of being in a rowboat going down the stream, and you know that everything you want is at the bottom of the stream. Yet we as humans insist on picking up the oars and rowing in the opposite direction. And it's when you just let go of the oars and allow yourself to just be floated down with this knowledge and trust and, like you say, surrender, that you are supported completely, wholly, and unbelievably just held. That's when everything just starts falling into place, like Tetris.
Oh, beautiful, Janet and Shar. Thank you. Hillary, as always, you there's so many juicy things, but the mic drop moment for me was you talking about just like asking for divine guidance and actually starting in like in really simple ways and trusting that divine guidance. And it really connects back to sovereignty, which connects back to actually oneness, because what is good for me is good for all. Like if I trust divine guidance, then it's actually good for everybody, because then we're all feeling connected. And so to me, that was the mic drop moment for me, where it just all just landed, and I just went, oh yeah, that's it. I get it. So thank you. Beautiful.
Thanks, Christina and Janet and Shar. Hillary, you always say something that I feel like you're saying right to me. And I know that that's because you work from a source place. You work from that place. So you probably are talking to me. And it was the reminder, like my mic drop moment, Christina, yeah, like my duh moment was like, oh my God, would you just pray more, Overbury? Would you just, and I have so much stuff around the word pray because, it means different things, different people, and it's locked into a narrative of what praying is. And, praying for me isn't this, it's usually writing or literally just listening to the wind and like being out in nature and listening. I don't even know what I'm hearing, but it doesn't matter. So I just want to thank you for that reminder. And then the other piece, as a whole is I'm just thank you for your hope, that to know that this conversation of reimagining capitalism is a living thing and not an intellectual exercise around the table. Isn't this interesting? What if, but actually is a living practice. And that you're modeling that in the awkward space of trying to sort that out and having all the conversations of that when other people are in doubt, like somebody's doing this. And for that, I'm deeply grateful. The integration between, like, I feel like as a bridge organization of Indigenous and non-Indigenous, you're like a bridge organization of practical and woo. I'm being ridiculous, but I'm not, right? Like it's the bridge moment. And so I'm deeply grateful for that. And I'm going to pass to you and for the last words.
Oh, thank you so much. Wow, what an honor to have those reflections back at me. I just hold that with deep gratitude. Thank you so much. Part of transforming ventures and my thinking and who I am comes from you all, like you and Charlene as the holder of the source ideas for Powerhouse and Regen have brought such beautiful things into the world. And the most beautiful thing is that you are able to integrate people like Tina and Christina and Janet and Sharon fully. Like you are wanting them to be their brightest selves and bring their best to this, even if it means a little like so and each of you in your own work, because each of you are change makers and you have your own work within and outside of this space, are such an inspiration to me. And yeah, I just thank you. You're part of who I am. And I thank you so much. These conversations are the most important thing in the world. They are what matters. And so I hosting circles is not my work in the world. And I'm just so delighted that it is all of your work in the world and that I can come and play sometimes. Just so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. And thank all of you for joining us here on Gather for Her, which is a Powerhouse Masterclass series unpacking what it means to be a relational leader in these unprecedented times of global change. We want you to know that this conversation has been recorded and it will be shared on our YouTube channel. And again, as a podcast renamed as The How for Her, which you can find on Spotify and all the other places that you listen. Gather for Her is hosted by Powerhouse, where we walk beside leaders to amplify their change work as they walk their path of whole leadership, guided by relational leadership practices and Indigenous wisdom. Many thanks to our impact producer and sister company, Regen Media, who reminds us that we can take the power of media into our own hands when we support stories that heal, regenerate, uplift, and transform. And thank you to the hands at our back, Powerhouse and Regen's digital storytellers, Zoe Gray, Madeline Archibald, and Willow Smith. And so much thanks to you, my co-hosts and sisters in change, the Braid of Powerhouse, Charlene, Christina, Sharon, and welcome Janet to our space. And to all of you, to our listeners, our community of change makers and leaders and social impactors. Thank you for walking with us in co-creation of the world we're living into together. You're always welcome here each week on Gather for Her and over in our community practice, the Leader Path. And so connect with us at powerhouse.com. And just so much love to all of you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Yeah.